She never said she didn't love you, she just stopped showing it. And that's what makes it so confusing. There was no argument you could point to, no clear ending you could prepare for, just a shift you felt in your chest before you could explain it with words. Messages took longer, conversations felt thinner, effort started flowing in one direction, and somehow you became the one trying harder to keep something alive that was quietly fading. Most men don't lose relationships because they stop caring. They lose them because they care more when the other person starts caring less. You told yourself to be patient, to be understanding, to give her space. But what you didn't realize is that space, when combined with inconsistency, doesn't create closeness. It creates control. Because when love is real, it doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't turn affection into a reward you have to earn, and it certainly doesn't make you feel anxious for asking for what once came naturally. What if the problem wasn't that love disappeared, but that the dynamic changed? What if what felt like distance was actually a pattern, a slow psychological pull that keeps you investing while she withdraws? In this video, we're not talking about blame or bitterness, we're talking about clarity. Because once you understand the signs, you stop chasing explanations and start seeing the truth. She tells you she's busy. Work is stressful, family needs her, life is overwhelming, and at first you believe her because you want to be understanding. You don't want to pressure her, you don't want to seem needy, so you wait. But over time, a pattern forms. She's always too busy for you, yet somehow never too busy for the things that excite her. She finds time to scroll, to post, to laugh, to respond to others, just not to connect with you in a way that feels consistent or secure. And that's when time stops being a circumstance and starts becoming a tool. This isn't about schedules, it's about priority. When a woman is emotionally invested, she creates space even in chaos. A short message, a quick call, a clear plan. Effort doesn't disappear, it adapts. But when her interest fades, time becomes a shield, a way to pull back without confrontation, to distance herself without having to explain why. Psychologically, this often reflects avoidant behavior. Withdrawing intimacy helps her feel safe and in control. The less access you have to her, the more she feels protected. And the more you wait, the more she learns that your patience costs her nothing. A woman who wants you makes time. A woman who's playing you makes excuses. You've been talking, seeing each other, sharing moments that feel personal. Yet months go by, and you still haven't met anyone from her world. No friends, no social circle, no real glimpse into her life beyond the moments she chooses to show you. Every time it comes up, there's an explanation ready. It's too soon. They're busy. You wouldn't like them anyway. But when consistency meets avoidance, it's no longer coincidence. A woman who values a man doesn't keep him hidden. She doesn't protect the connection by isolating it. She integrates him naturally into her life. When she doesn't, it's often because secrecy gives her flexibility, no questions, no accountability, no limits on her options. This isn't about privacy. Privacy is healthy. Privacy protects intimacy. Secrecy, on the other hand, protects escape routes. When no one knows you exist, she's free to move emotionally without consequences, to entertain attention elsewhere while keeping you close enough to meet her emotional needs. In that dynamic, you don't become a partner, you become a placeholder, someone who fills space without claiming a role. And the longer you stay in the shadows, the easier it becomes for her to pretend you were never part of the story at all. What's hidden is rarely what's valued. You're sitting right across from her. The setting is calm. The moment should feel connected, but her attention keeps drifting. Her phone lights up, and her eyes follow it without hesitation. A quick glance turns into scrolling. A notification becomes a distraction. And suddenly, you're sharing space without sharing presence. This isn't just absent-minded behavior. It's emotional displacement. When a woman is invested, she leans into depth. She listens. She engages. She wants to feel the moment. But when her interest fades, distraction becomes a convenient escape. The phone offers constant stimulation, instant validation, and an easy way to avoid the vulnerability of real connection. Psychologically, this is tied to dopamine-driven behavior. Small hits of attention feel safer than sustained intimacy. Notifications don't demand emotional effort. People do. So instead of leaning into the connection, she reaches for the screen. The hard truth is this: distraction has become a modern form of rejection, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet disengagement. When she can't stay present with you, she's showing you where you stand in her priorities. You're not competing with another man in that moment. You're competing with her need for constant stimulation. And when that wins, connection loses. You notice it in small moments: the way her tone changes when another man speaks, the extra smile, the laughter that lingers just a little too long. It happens right in front of you, subtle enough to deny, obvious enough to feel. And then she looks your way, not to reassure you, but to see your reaction. That's not carelessness, that's calibration. For some women, attention isn't just flattering, it's regulating. It reassures them of their value, their power, their desirability. And when that need is strong, validation becomes a game. Not always conscious, but deeply habitual. Flirting becomes a way to measure influence, to see how much discomfort you'll tolerate in the name of keeping the peace. Psychologically, this pattern is rooted in validation-seeking behavior. Each reaction feeds the ego. Each response confirms control. If you stay silent, she assumes the behavior is acceptable. If you react emotionally, she knows she still holds your attention. Either way, the dynamic shifts in her favor. Respect doesn't disappear through betrayal. It erodes through repeated tests that go unchallenged. Over time, what started as harmless becomes normalized, and your boundaries quietly weaken. Real interest doesn't require competition, and a woman who values you doesn't need to remind you that others want her. There are stretches of silence, days where you barely hear from her, no curiosity, no check-ins, and just as you start to detach, her name appears on your screen. This time, her voice is softer, warmer. She sounds engaged again, almost affectionate. But there's always a reason. She needs advice, a favor, emotional support, help solving a problem. And once that need is met, the warmth fades as quickly as it appeared. You're left wondering what changed, when in reality, nothing did. The pattern simply repeated. This isn't connection, it's conditional engagement. Psychologically, this is known as an instrumental relationship. Emotional closeness is offered not as a bond, but as a tool. Attention becomes a form of payment, given only when compliance is needed. And because the interaction feels intimate in the moment, it's easy to mistake usefulness for importance. Men often fall into this trap because being needed feels meaningful. It creates purpose. But love isn't activated by necessity. It's sustained by presence. If her affection only shows up when she wants something, it's not a relationship. It's a transaction. Over time, this dynamic trains you to overgive in exchange for brief connection. And without realizing it, you stop asking whether you're valued and start proving that you're useful. A partner chooses you. A transaction uses you. Anytime the conversation moves toward the future, her energy changes. She smiles, but redirects. She says things like, "Let's not rush," or "I just want to live in the moment." On the surface, it sounds reasonable, even healthy. And at first, you agree. You don't want to pressure her. You want things to unfold naturally. But weeks turn into months, and nothing moves forward. There's no clarity, no direction, no shared vision. You're emotionally involved, yet structurally undefined. That space you're in isn't freedom, it's limbo. And limbo benefits only one side. Psychologically, this reflects commitment avoidance. She wants closeness without responsibility, connection without consequence. By keeping the future vague, she maintains control. She never has to choose, explain, or take accountability for where things are going. And if she ever decides to leave, she can do so without guilt, because nothing was ever official. Avoidance feels calm because there's no conflict, but silence isn't stability, it's postponement, and postponed clarity slowly drains your emotional security. If someone values the connection, they don't fear defining it. When tomorrow is consistently avoided, it's often because an exit is already being considered. Clarity delayed is clarity denied. His name comes up casually. A story here, a comparison there. Sometimes it's framed as humor, sometimes as honesty. She says she's just being open, but every time it happens, you feel it. A quiet reminder that someone else still occupies emotional space she hasn't fully cleared. This isn't simple memory, it's emotional residue. When a woman hasn't processed a past relationship, the attachment doesn't end just because the relationship did. Psychologically, this is known as emotional imprinting. Strong emotional experiences carve patterns that continue to influence attraction, expectations, and reactions long after the person is gone. You're not competing with her ex as a person. You're competing with the feeling he once created. And that's why no matter how consistent you are, it never feels like enough. The standard keeps shifting because it was never built with you in mind. Many men believe patience will heal this, that if they show up better, love harder, stay longer, she'll eventually let go. But healing doesn't come from replacement, it comes from resolution. And that's something only she can do. When her past keeps showing up in the present, it's a sign she hasn't moved forward. She's just moved on physically. And the longer you stay, the more you'll realize you're not building something new. You're standing in the shadow of something unfinished. You can't grow where someone else still lives emotionally. You finally speak up. You calmly explain that something makes you uncomfortable, the way she talks to other men, the way certain behaviors cross your personal line of respect. You're not accusing. You're not attacking. You're simply setting a boundary. And suddenly you're the issue. She calls you insecure, controlling, too sensitive. What began as a clear expression of your standards is quickly reframed as a flaw in your character. This isn't misunderstanding, it's reversal, a psychological maneuver that shifts responsibility away from her and places it entirely on you. This pattern is often rooted in guilt-based manipulation. When boundaries threaten someone's control, they attack the boundary itself. By making you doubt your emotional clarity, she avoids having to reflect on her own behavior. And because you care, you start explaining yourself, apologizing, softening your needs to restore peace. But every time you do that, a lesson is learned, not by you, by her. She learns that your boundaries are negotiable. That discomfort will always lose to her comfort. Over time, respect erodes not through conflict, but through silence after self-betrayal. Healthy love doesn't punish honesty. A woman who respects you doesn't turn your standards into accusations. Boundaries aren't control, they're self-respect. And any connection that requires you to abandon them isn't asking for love, it's asking for submission. She suddenly becomes affectionate. She tells you how different you are, how supportive, how rare men like you are. The words land perfectly, especially because you haven't heard them in a while. For a moment, you feel seen again, valued, chosen. Then comes the ask. It might be small at first, a favor, your time, your help, your resources, and only then does the pattern become clear. The praise wasn't spontaneous, it was strategic, timed carefully to lower your resistance and activate your desire to please. Psychologically, this is called intermittent reinforcement. Warmth is given inconsistently, just enough to keep you emotionally invested, never enough to make you feel secure. The unpredictability is what makes it powerful. You begin to crave her approval more than her presence because approval feels scarce. Over time, compliments stop feeling affirming and start feeling conditional. You don't receive appreciation for who you are, you earn it for what you provide, and that's the trap. Validation becomes a leash, not a bond. Real affection doesn't arrive with conditions attached, and praise that always precedes a request isn't love, it's leverage. An argument starts like any other. Tension rises, emotions surface, and then she says it, maybe we should just break up. The words aren't calm, they're sharp, dropped into the conversation like a weapon, not a conclusion. She doesn't actually want to leave. What she wants is to see your fear. This is emotional coercion, the threat of abandonment used to regain control. The moment those words are spoken, the balance shifts. You stop addressing the issue and start trying to save the relationship. You apologize, you explain, you promise. Not because you're wrong, but because you're afraid of losing her. And that's the conditioning. Each time leaving is threatened, you learn to associate disagreement with loss. Conflict becomes dangerous. Your needs shrink. Her leverage grows. Over time, fear replaces connection, and stability is maintained through anxiety rather than trust. Healthy relationships argue, repair, and move forward. They don't weaponize separation. A woman who values the bond doesn't reach for the exit to win an argument. She reaches for understanding. When someone repeatedly uses leaving as a threat, believe the message beneath it. They're not fighting for the relationship, they're controlling it. Some tests are meant to be failed, and love that survives only through fear was never secure to begin with. These signs aren't meant to make you angry, bitter, or suspicious of women. They're meant to wake you up, because emotional manipulation rarely starts with cruelty. It starts with confusion, with mixed signals that feel like mystery, with affection that feels earned instead of given, with silence that you mistake for depth. Most men don't lose relationships because they're weak. They lose them because they're loyal to the wrong patterns. They mistake endurance for strength. They believe that if they just stay patient, just prove themselves a little more, things will return to how they were. But real connection doesn't require you to disappear to be kept. Strength isn't chasing. It isn't fixing. It isn't negotiating your worth. Strength is recognition, seeing behavior clearly, without fantasy or fear, and responding with self-respect instead of desperation. Once you understand how emotional control works, how distance becomes strategy, how affection turns into leverage, how silence trains patience, you stop being pulled into the game. You step back, you observe, and in that space, your power returns. Love isn't supposed to leave you anxious, confused, or constantly self-questioning. If it does, it's not love asking you to grow. It's control asking you to shrink. Clarity is power. And the moment you choose clarity, you stop chasing validation and start protecting your peace.